That is your interpretation. None of that was actually said. It is what you have taken out of his statements there.
Ah, yes, yes. Not her gaslighting Cenk too. Not her gaslighting Cenk too. Look at Cenk's face. Cenk is like, I'm gonna gaslight right now.
I just can't be a part of TYT anymore. It's just too much. It's ridiculous. Because at a certain point it becomes embarrassing for me. Because how can I, as a trans person who actually knows the science behind this, who actually is like actively trying to support trans people, as somebody that people look up to me, right? People literally like send me messages and be like, I'm so inspired, you know, you being a TYT, and I have to deal with messages from them now asking about, hey, what's going on with TYT? Hey, what the hell is happening here? Like, why is Anna saying this? Why is Cenk saying this? And that is just like the amount of like psychic damage that I have to take every single day dealing with not only the transphobic nonsense of the Republicans, but also whatever Cenk and Anna are on right now. It's just too much. And I just, because at a certain point it becomes embarrassing, because then people think that I'm like endorsing their views, and I cannot. I will not. I refuse to lend any support to those views whatsoever.
Damn.
You just watched a small portion of Benny Carollo's 30-minute-long video explaining in great detail why she is leaving TYT. Now, for those of you who don't know, Benny was a TYT contributor, but as a trans person, she can simply no longer condone the anti-trans rhetoric coming from the show's main hosts. Now, if you're unaware, Benny is not the only trans TYT contributor to call it quits. Sandy Lovas, a non-binary person who also hosts Left of the Box, also left the network recently and recently spoke out as well for the same reason.
A year ago, when I had only been working on Rebel HQ for a month, I called out Cenk and Anna on this very issue. Do you think I wasn't aware of the risk attached to that? Damn straight I'd be making noise about this both on and off camera. So what if I lose my job over it? Hell, I'm making these videos knowing full well I'm probably blowing any chance I have of ever getting back on that network.
And Sandy went on to encourage the TYT staff to walk out in support of their trans comrades. But
yeah, they're not gonna walk out. They're not gonna walk out, hun. That's their paycheck. They're not gonna fucking walk out. And honestly, like, I'm kind of disappointed. I am honestly kind of disappointed in the whole entire TYT institution. Because it's like, anyone that stays at TYT, you are literally endorsing their problematic views. You are endorsing it. At the very least, even if you don't walk away from the job, at the very least you can call it out and say that you don't hold those opinions, you don't hold those values, or whatever the fuck the situation might be. Like, you're not even calling them out. You're not even saying anything. You're just gonna go continue about your day? Be for real. Well, to be fair, Trumo, a lot of the TYT contributors have other jobs. An institution pays me like $200 to make a TikTok video for them, right? I'll do like 10 of those every month. And then I'll also get money from Twitch. I'll also get money from my TikToks. I'll also get money from my sponsorships. So it's like, yeah, they don't pay their contributors like a lot of money, but they also make money like in different ways. You know what I mean?
Benny and Sandy aren't the only LGBTQ plus people at the network that have left. After being a network partner since 2017, I officially left TYT on May 1st of this year, and I think you all know why. I never stated why, but you all
Wait, I didn't know he was a partner.
know why. It was because of this turn that they've made recently. And as you all know, leaving TYT was an absolute nightmare for me. I lost monetization for over a month, but I just couldn't be part of a network that doesn't value my community. And all three of us have tried to inform them on being better allies, but none of those attempts have been successful. All of us have failed. So we're here. That's 3 LGBTQ plus people that TYT lost within the span of a couple of months. So the question is, how many LGBTQ plus people are even left at TYT? How comfortable are those remaining LGBTQ plus employees in the face of all of this? I mean, they've got to feel really uncomfortable now. You know, Cenk and Anna love to scold idiot trans activists over optics, but have they considered the optics of this crisis that they've created, how the supposed home of progressives lost multiple LGBTQ plus affiliates in just a couple of months because of their rhetoric, because of their refusal to listen to anything that we have to say, because they just disregard our input, even if it comes from a good place, even if they've known, at least me, for example, for years. I mean, if that doesn't trigger introspection, literally nothing will. Now, to those not plugged into the discourse, let me give you some additional context. So, elements of TYT's coverage has become increasingly reactionary, not just...
Oh, yeah, I totally know that they don't pay their mods. Yeah, I know another mod that told me she doesn't get paid either. Which is insane to me because I feel like if you're modding for a literal news network, you should at least get paid a stipend.
This year, not just with regard to the trans issue, but more broadly speaking. And that's not...
Yeah, but it's been a thing though, Kimra. Like, they don't pay their mods. Like, they've never paid their mods. I quit as a TYT mod 3 days ago over this. Oh, wow. Damn, so we have 2 TYT mods that have quit. Interesting.
To characterize the totality of their content, but they have gotten noticeably more reactionary, ranging from their coverage of crime to homelessness to Cenk's endorsement of a right-wing billionaire who tried to buy the Los Angeles mayoral race after leading the charge against money in politics for years. It all is very out of character seemingly for them. But the straw that broke the camel's back was this irrational tweet by Anna Kasparian where she demanded to not be called a birthing person. People like myself responded asking who called her that and explained that this type of inclusive language is only used in very specific legal or clinical settings. She then doubled down weeks later, specifically in an attack against my leftist mafia co-host, and she laughed off the quote meltdowns over that tweet. Now, I'm not going to rehash that discourse because we've already talked about it at length on the Leftist Mafia, and I've talked about it on this channel. I posted a video about that. I'll link to it down below if you want to watch that. But leftists and colleagues tried to delicately explain to both Anna and Cenk, who defended her at the time, that fixating and hyper-focusing on these insignificant issues, it just lends credence to the right's claim that trans people and their allies are unreasonable. And we even explained how, as cis allies ourselves, we've made mistakes that we've had to correct. I explained how purposefully misgendering transphobes is not a good look. That's not how trans people want me to advocate for them. Lance from the Surfs, my leftist mafia co-host, has explained how trans people have talked to him about particular jokes that he shouldn't be making as a cis person. So we try to...
Yeah, I've definitely done my fair share of things that are not deemed acceptable. I've had people who are non-binary come into this chat, and time again I forget that they are non-binary and I literally misgender them, not out of just like purposefully trying to be mean. For example, Kimra, I've literally told Kimra, hey girl, what's up, when Kimra is non-binary. There's YBE, Young Black Economist. I have accidentally misgendered them as well because I forget. I just literally forget. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's like, yeah, sometimes it's hard. Like, sometimes you don't remember. Sometimes we're so conditioned to be saying like she, her, like so much, you know what I mean? That like sometimes we just like accidentally, or there was this one time where I was talking about a story and the story included the word Tranny, and I said that out loud, and I had trans people in the chat say like, hey, don't say that word, like that's rude, even though I didn't say it with the intent to be rude. I was talking about a story that had nothing to do with, like, didn't have anything to do with me calling anybody that necessarily. So, you know, like, yeah, as cisgendered people, like, we fuck up. And I think that's okay, right? Like, I think it's a part of the learning process. Like, being open, being an ally, being open, and having the right intention, right, to be supportive is so important rather than just being so blatantly transphobic, right? There's a difference between somebody that's trying to learn and trying to be an ally rather than somebody that is intentionally, maliciously, you know, saying that's harmful. You have multiple people coming to you saying it's harmful and you still double down. You know, that's when it's a fucking problem. Exactly, yeah, exactly. And you know, people are stuck in their ways, right? Like the concept of they, them, non-binary people have been a thing for a very, very, very long time, right? Like you have two-spirited indigenous peoples. You have even in like ancient Europe and ancient Egypt, like before Christianity colonized Europe, people were non-binary, and in Greece as well, right? So this idea of not the idea, but the fundamental living identifying as they, them, or non-binary, or not really identifying within one gender or in the gender complex that we were raised to know about, it's not a new concept, right? Like it's always been around. But post-colonialization and like that, like accepting of those, like, you know, people identifying that way has become more and more and more just like not accepted because it, like, religious, you know, beliefs and shit like that. Long story short, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I did not even know what the pronouns were until I transferred into university in 2017. I had no idea. I went into my first classroom and the teacher was like, my name is Miss Smith, and my pronouns are she, her. And in my head, I was like, what the fuck? So then she was like, we're gonna go in a circle, like, do your introduction, your pronouns, and then, like, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I was like, what are pronouns? Like, what do you mean? So then I was like, thankfully, I was the last in class, so I was able to kind of, like, understand the gist of what pronouns were. And then I was like, my name is Ariana, I go by she, her. And then I actually went home and I Googled it because I was so confused. I was like, what is going on? Like, why did they ask me for my pronouns? And then I understood, and that's when I finally learned. So, like, you know, some people, boomers, the older generation, you know what I mean? Obviously, it's going to be a heavy learning curve for them, right? Because they're old, they're stuck in their ways. I don't think they mean to be rude. They just don't understand. But with that being said, somebody like Anna, like, you would expect far more. You know what I mean? You would expect somebody like Anna to understand. And, like, it's not just this, like, she's been going down a right-leaning path, right? Like, she's hard on crime. She's very against homelessness or homeless people. She doesn't want to be called a birthing person. She fully supports Kyle Rittenhouse, which is a very weird take to have as a progressive. She sees the argument when it comes to banning transgender affirming care for children, like hormonal care for children. Yeah, was fully supporting, allegedly she was fully supporting Kyle Rittenhouse on the podcast she went on. Like, she's been shifting. I just think the reality of this shift is finally coming out.
Go above and beyond to explain how we've been in this predicament as well, whereas allies, we didn't do the best, but we had to course correct. So that way they realize that it's not an attack on them. It's just we're trying to do better in our advocacy. But that didn't really make a difference. After going out of our way to be charitable, Anna Kasparian accused the leftist mafia of gaslighting her on this issue, which is odd considering...
Actually, Warrior, a lot of the people in my chat have revoked their TYT membership, just so you know.
I learned about what pronouns were in the 90s in 2nd grade. I, me, they, he, she, all pronouns. One of the fundamentals of the English language. If you're not trying to use them properly, I assume you're a...
I mean, Anna and I were mutuals, and I blocked and unblocked her, so we're not mutuals anymore. Cause I don't want people to think I'm endorsing her views. Do I look like? I'm not endorsing this shit she's saying. I used to really look up to her. Those days have passed. Yeah, those days have passed.
Bring the fact that she made this exact point that we all made about inclusive language 8 months prior in a video where Josh Hawley was criticizing Professor Kiara Bridges for using the term people with the capacity for pregnancy. So was she gaslighting herself or what? Like, it doesn't make sense, right? To say that we were gaslighting is bizarre. And just to be extra sure that I didn't say anything that I regret, I went back and watched our first episode.
Oh my god, Kimra, thank you so much for the 5 gift subs. I really appreciate it. Thank you, non-binary royalty. That's what I'm calling my non-binary folks. Non-binary royalty.
Where we talked about this, and we were all incredibly kind, but yet, despite the use of our kid gloves, they've only gotten worse. They didn't listen to anything we had to say, and they've gotten much worse. And there's a lot of clips floating around on the internet that people are reacting to, and we're not going to watch all of them. There's a lot, but I want to point out a couple of examples here to demonstrate what I mean and why I feel like at this point they may be just too far gone, and I'm done trying to educate them if clearly they're not even coming from a position of good faith any longer, right? So one example is Anna and Jank talking about a MAGA chud's motivation for something that he said, and listen specifically to one of the things that Anna says.
What are your values that Donald Trump shares with you then?
Parents in control of their children, you know, being able to make choices for your family. America's being assaulted. Open borders, you know all the issues. We all know the issues.
He has our values, does he? What's your values? I mean, you don't mean family values. He's raw dogging porn stars, and he's says terrible things, does terrible things. You don't mean family values. So what values are you talking about? Oh, you know, he believes in putting parents in charge of children. That means I don't like gay people. I'm sorry, that's what it means.
That means he wants to be able to make a decision or help.
A decision about what?
He doesn't want schools making decisions for
about
his kids.
About gay people.
And
racism, right? He doesn't want racism taught. Those are the two issues.
Look how mad Anna looks in this clip, by the way. Just look at her face.
Issues, Anna. Those are the two issues in the schools.
Those are not the two issues, okay? One of the issues that you're totally downplaying right now, not even mentioning, is that some school districts want to, let's say a student comes out and identifies as transgender, school districts want to support that student and, you know, help him or her through that transition without ever having to notify the parents. I think there are issues there. Okay, and I do not begrudge parents for being concerned about that.
Anna, I agree with you. But you're finding a sliver of an issue. That guy's not talking, he doesn't even know that. And when you ask him about the issues, they always go to, I don't like Latinos, I mean immigrants. I don't like gay people, I mean, I want parental control in schools. So that's the reality, you can see it all over the tapes.
Gee, right, we have to give bigots some grace, y'all. I'm dead blonde.
That is your interpretation. None of that was actually said. It is what you have taken out of his statements there.
Ah, yes, yes. Not her gaslighting Cenk too. Not her gaslighting Cenk too. Look at Cenk's face. Cenk is like, I'm getting gaslit right now. How does Anna not realize her own bias? She does know her own bias. She's switching sides.
You're right.
Yeah.
See, I find that clip interesting because you can see Anna bend over backwards to be overly charitable towards the MAGA chud, but for some reason, she can't extend that same level of charitability towards trans people and their allies who reached out in good faith to explain to her why her rhetoric has been harmful as of late. See, when it comes to MAGA chuds, we've got to try to interpret what they're saying in the most charitable.
My wife is a teacher. If a student came out to her and she had to tell their parents, that kid could be beaten or kicked out of their home. It happens often.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Cenk is like on my own show. Wow. I know. Cenk is like, I'm just kidding.
Charitable way imaginable, but when it comes to allies of trans people, well, they're attacking me. Haven't you seen my record? It's just ridiculous. But that's not why I wanted to play the video. So when they're speculating about what this conservative means by parents in control of their children, Anna ascribes good intentions to him by suggesting that he's probably talking about school districts who support and help students through their transitions, right, without ever notifying parents. Now, she says that there's an issue with that. Now, let me be very clear. First and foremost, teachers cannot consent to gender-affirming care on behalf of parents. Parents have to give consent in order for minors to receive gender-affirming care. Second of all, protecting a child's identity is crucial because there are many LGBTQ+ kids who become homeless after getting rejected by unsupportive parents. So some school districts purposefully do not out kids to parents because of that very reason. They could literally endanger their lives. So why am I having to explain this to Anna Kasparian, who is a 17-year veteran? Do you think that she doesn't know this? Leaving out that crucial context is incredibly damaging because it suggests that teachers are doing some nefarious thing by simply affirming the identities of their students. Anna is a very smart woman, right? She's well aware of that. But
honestly, a lot of people are saying like, oh, Anna is grifting. Anna's a grifter. Hun, I don't think Anna is grifting at all. I think this is genuinely what Anna believes. And I think, unfortunately, she's just one of those people that was a leftist and is now gearing more and more towards the right. Why? I don't know. TYT has always been like this. Anna has always been like this. I wouldn't say she's always been like this. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say she had half of the opinions that she has today 20 years ago. I think because of lived life experiences and because of the facts that she has openly said that she listens to right-wing podcasts to broaden her horizon, I think that her opinions have slowly changed. Okay, let me give you guys my hypothesis, okay? I don't think it's fair to say she's always been this way. I don't think it's fair to say that. I don't think she's always been this way. Once you reach a certain level of financial gain, wealth, and notoriety, you tend to lose where you came from, right? So let's say if you grew up poor and you grew up leftist and an abolitionist or whatever, but then you end up working hard as fuck 20 years later, you end up having millions of dollars and you end up having financial gain, growth, and notoriety, you tend to start naturally veering a little bit towards the right. Okay, you start to naturally start veering towards the right. Okay, that's just a natural shift that happens with a lot of people. Now, some people like Hassan have been able to stand their ground. Most people don't. Okay, number 2, she was just recently, within the past year, sexually harassed by a homeless man when I believe she was on a run. I believe she was either on a run or a hike or something like that. She was sexually harassed by and attacked by a homeless person. And that seriously changed her opinion from being soft on crime to hard on crime. That's when the first shift initially started happening, right? So I think that also shifted her a little bit to the right too, right? A little bit. She's always been listening to these right-wing podcasts to understand like what their logic is, what they're saying, what their arguments are. That's when I think everything started snowballing downhill, right? So she already has this financial backing, notoriety that kind of makes her forget where she came from, right? Then she got sexually harassed and attacked by a homeless person, which is incredibly scary and dangerous, right? And then it just kind of started snowballing, right? Then it was like, okay, well, I don't want to be called a birthing person. Okay, well, I think Kyle Rittenhouse was in the right. Okay, well, I'm not going to have conversations with you if you refer to me as a you're not even open to respecting me. And I think everything went downhill. And then the last point I'm going to make on top of all of this is that Anna has a lot of proximity to whiteness, okay? Yes, she's culturally and ethnically Armenian, but she looks like a white woman. If I were to see her walking down the street and I did not know her, I would say that that is a white woman, right? Now, upon further conversation, I would figure out that she's Armenian, but for the most part, she travels through life, she goes through life as a white woman, as a perceived white woman. Okay. And I understand that race is a social construct. I understand that whiteness is a social construct. I get that. I'm not trying to erase her Armenian culture or whatever ethnicity. But at the end of the day, you walk through life as a white woman, as a perceived white woman. And now with her dyed beach blonde hair, she's a lot more palatable to the Republicans, right? Because when you look at every single main Republican, contributor, whether it's Laura Ingraham, whether it's Tommy Lauren, or all of these Republican bigwigs that have their own shows, and they are beach blondes, and they can pass for beach blondes. They're not naturally that blonde. They dye their hair that blonde. So now she's even more palatable towards the right-wingers, right? So now what she's doing is that she has this bias. She's built this bias for herself based on her lived experiences in her life. And now what she's doing is instead of having productive discourse with the people who she has grown to know and grown to love through her job, she is now going on right-wing or libertarian podcasts to talk about her opinions and her findings to people who will inherently agree with her, who will inherently take her in, because they are frothing at the mouth for somebody that they can say, oh, look, this woman was with the left for this many years and now she's figuring out how stupid the left is or whatever. You know what I mean? But on top of that, she also started becoming soft on Israel. She stopped condemning Israel a couple years ago. Like, she has not been directly condemning Israel. She literally said on the podcast, I understand. She said something along the lines, allegedly, I'm not trying to get sued, but she said something along the lines of like, oh, I understand where Israel is coming from, essentially, with what they're doing. Your views are slowly veering towards the right, and unfortunately, Cenk is not checking you properly, because Cenk is somewhat also following your ideologies, not fully. I don't actually hate Cenk. I do think Cenk is salvageable, in my opinion. I think Anna is way too far gone, though. And so that's what I think is happening. I don't think it's right to say that she's always been this way, because this has been a gradual process. You know what I mean? Like, this has been a process that has been long in the works, and now we're kind of seeing the fruit of the looms. Like, now we're seeing what's happening, and it is what it is. Like, there's nothing we can do about it. Sometimes people get money, they get the fame, they get the power, they get the notoriety, and they switch sides, and that's okay. That's what happens. Like, I know none of us really agree with whatever Anna is saying, but that's what happens when you have a First Amendment right. You know what I mean? If we lived in a country like Iran, you wouldn't even be able to criticize the government. You wouldn't even be able to say your opinion unless it was in support of a dictatorship. You know what I mean? So, like, yeah, I understand this is really annoying. I get it. But, like, at the end of the day, we also need to thank God that we have that right. Like, we do have that right to build platforms off of an opinion and then change that opinion. Sure, you might be going down a right-wing pipeline, but at least you have the right to do that. You know what I mean? Do I support Anna? No. Do I like anything she's doing? No. I don't support this. You know what I mean? But, like, at least her, me, Mike, we all have this right to a certain extent. I mean, we do get shadow banned. We do get our views throttled. It's really hard to build a platform. Like, I'm not negating any of that, but like, we do have this right to, like, you know, independently speak our mind and speak our truth. And so, you know, it is what the fuck it is. Like, I can't do anything about it. You can't do anything about it. You know, I am personally, my best guess is that Anna is not going to be with TYT that much longer, maximum a year. I just think as she goes further down this pipeline, she's going to build a lot of animosity with a lot of her coworkers, and it's probably going to become a hostile work environment, not just for her, but for everybody around her. And so I do think at some point, if she doesn't have like a certain clause in her contract or something that doesn't allow her to work at somewhere else, she's probably going to leave. Maybe she's going to go independent. I don't know. Maybe she's going to get picked up by the Daily Wire. I just don't think she's going to be able to last at TYT for that much longer either. Benny left because she is a trans person. I don't think the other contributors are gonna leave. Yes, John and JR both said something, but like, it wasn't like Anna did this, Anna did that, we don't agree with Anna. It was more so like, hey, we support trans people, you know, we support trans rights. I've been streaming for literally over a year consecutively, and I'm just barely getting my numbers to the point where I could maybe get partnered with Twitch. Maybe. But I'm just saying, like, this shit is hard. It's not easy.
That was genuinely unhinged for a number of reasons.
He's letting Anna run off the... I mean, it's not going to be for that long, Tropical. It's not going to be for that long. There's going to be a point where business, you know, Cenk is a businessman. There's going to be a point where Cenk is going to be like, this is not worth it. This is not worth it. No, they're not Hassan refugees. Hassan's streaming right now.
First of all, I don't know who they're specifically referring to. I'm assuming that they're shadowboxing some caricature of a trans activist that they made up in their heads to be mad about. But I mean, I want to make it very, very clear. As a cis person, you do not get to dictate the terms.
If trans activists are fucking angry, they deem it necessary to protest in a certain way, and you are not trans, you are a cis person, a cisgendered person, you have no right to tell the said trans activist or trans person how to advocate for their right. It's just not your place. The BLM protest, you say, oh, they're looting, that's bad, but you're not a black person. Who the fuck are you to say that that's bad? Who the fuck are you to say how black people should be expressing their frustration or their anger? That's not your fucking, it's not a struggle that you are directly impacted by. And number two, it's not something that you will fully understand ever. So you, who has the privilege of, you know, who has a bit more privileges, because obviously, like, you know, Black people go through a lot of shit in this country. Who the fuck are you to tell them how to protest? They were telling everybody, right? They were like, oh, protest peacefully. Protest peacefully. You need to protest. Protest peacefully. You can protest. That's your God-given right, but do it peacefully, right? And so Black people did that. Black people were peacefully stopping highways. They were peacefully kneeling. They were peacefully holding up a fist. White people were angry. They were like, how dare you kneel in front of the national anthem? How dare you stop traffic? How dare you put up a fist during a game? How dare you do blah, 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 right? And so for years, Black activists were really being incredibly peaceful when they were protesting, right? For example, when Trayvon Martin was murdered, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, all of those deaths, they were incredibly peaceful, right? The protesting was incredibly peaceful. And then George Floyd happens, which anyone who watched that video of George Floyd's murder knows that that was really just gruesome and egregious and disgusting, right? And then the minute Black people started expressing their anger in small amounts, right? Because more than 90% of the BLM protests were peaceful, by the way, right? Then everyone was like, oh, you guys are looting. You guys are looting. How dare you looting? That's anarchy. That's this, that, and the third. Well, honey, the Black community was protesting peacefully for years. Y'all didn't listen. What the do you want them to do at this point? And who the are you to tell them otherwise?
If they think that businesses shouldn't be allowed to discriminate because polling shows that people want that, well, they're throwing their own community under the bus. They're self-sabotaging. No. Discrimination is wrong, period. And most people, I don't think, base their political positions on polling. We base it off of morality. But on top of that, they're just wrong. David Dole explained this eloquently in a recent video about how they're so wrong on the politics of this issue.
Let's reiterate here, including 55% of Republicans saying that this is too much anti-trans legislation. This is too much. This polling finds that voters across all political parties see the Republican attempt to flood state legislatures with anti-LGBTQ. That Aaron Thomas, a pollster at Data for Progress. It also shows that the ideas espoused by today's loudest anti-trans activists, that trans people threaten children and that our identities are a woke invention, don't resonate with the average voter. Again, this does not resonate with the average voter. This is amazing. I'm just gonna play this.
I'm wondering if you think that DeSantis's, very public war on woke distracts from the message that you like about him.
A little bit, I do.
He did sign a law that restricts transgender care for adults as well as kids.
I have greater concerns about the 6-week abortion ban.
Tell me about that.
I think if he made it clear that he's a states' rights person and that he's not looking to kind of pass a national law in this regard, I would be less concerned.
This DeSantis voter is completely unfazed. She doesn't care about trans issues at all, either way. She's focused in terms of what concerns her about DeSantis. She's more focused on abortion, which makes total sense.
Exactly. And David's entire video is incredible, so I would recommend that you check it out. I'll link to that down below. But the point is, raw polling data alone does not determine elections because people are so much more complex than that. They prioritize issues differently. So while Americans might support trans discrimination in sports, it is a less salient issue to them than, say, the economy or abortion. But even if it was the most salient issue and it was unpopular, the goal with our large platforms should be to change their minds, right? Or should we just kowtow to Republicans? Because that's some cuck shit. I say we try to use our platforms to change people's minds rather than just throwing up the white flag. And cis people, furthermore, do not get to demand that trans people tolerate some discrimination. If you're truly an ally, you make the case for them. And try to change minds, not tell them to back down. You tell Republicans to back down. You scold Republicans, not them.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Next, we're on the line. But basically what TYT said was shouting down bigots and making them feel uncomfortable is unacceptable. But sitting quietly with the trans flag while the transphobe fearmongers about you, that is a form of protest that the Young Turks is willing to tolerate.
Well, what you're about to see is what I think is incredibly counterproductive for anyone who actually gives a damn about transgender rights in this country. Let's watch.
Oh, I remember this clip.
Now, it's worth noting that there were trans rights activists in the room as she was giving her talk, and I want to show you what I think a productive protest looks like. Let's watch.
You go, they honor you, they name their Woman of the Year. And so I went to this convention, it was in January, it was in San Antonio. And so I go to the convention, obviously not in support because the award was immediately meaningless.
Get any more disruptive than that, and you're going to be scolded to get back in line. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is not to rehash old, but it's necessary because Anna used that same example again.
Hi, Swim with Whales. How are you?
To talk about an issue that she has with trans activists in a Twitter exchange with Juniper. Now, some of the tweets from Anna have since been deleted, but we can kind of piece together what was said and come away with an understanding of her problem with trans activists. So she presumably denounces the protest against Riley Gaines here, to which Juniper responds saying, "Not sure if you've noticed, but states are currently using violence against trans people. Curious as to why you seem to care about the grifter who terrorizes trans people than trans people who are being affected by this legislation and violence." Anna replies saying, "You don't watch the show, so you have no idea what I talk about or how often I defend the trans community. I think the fringe shit and activists like you turn the country against people. You're just too stupid to see it." Juniper responds saying, "You intentionally misunderstood what I said, you moron, lol." To which Anna responds saying, "No, I didn't. You said barricading people you disagree with is non-violent. If an alt-right group did that to a trans speaker, I'm sure you'd change your tune. You're dishonest, childish, and batshit crazy."
Sis, this ain't a good look.
Now let's just pause it right there, because you can already see the problem with that. She's trying to frame right-wingers and trans people as if they're on equal ground when that's not the case. One of them is a marginalized community who is under attack, and the other is a political group that is trying to attack said community. But at some point, Anna made this tweet, which she ended up deleting for obvious.
Dude, this tweet was wild. Sis said the civil rights movement did not use the same strategies as the trans movement. They didn't barricade speakers they disagreed with in a classroom for 3 hours. They persuaded through nonviolence and showing America their humanity. Dog, that is the worst take anyone can ever have, because you clearly don't know anything about the Black Panthers, honey. Come on. Even MLK wasn't all that peaceful either. We just America washed him to make him look like he was peaceful.
Wow. So yeah, needless to say, I understand why
they're losing more followers. Oh damn, look. July, it's only 6 days into July and they've already lost 155 followers.
She chose to delete that tweet because it's quite the doozy. It is quite the take. Oof level is very, very high. Now, that tweet is wrong because it's ahistorical, and also trans people have chosen, like the civil rights movement, to show people their humanity. You're just choosing to not see it in this instance, right? You're choosing to sympathize with the humanity of the bigot as opposed to the trans activists who are rightfully angered at what she's saying, at what she's advocating for. See, you don't have to, believe it or not, sympathize with the bigot who's feeling discomfort for going on a propaganda tour demonizing this entire community. In the same way, though, that she tried to sympathize with the MAGA chud in her argument with Cenk, she chose to put herself in the shoes of the bigot instead of the trans activists, right? And rather than trying to understand why they would be angry, she's tone policing them. Rather than seeing that their anger might be justified because they're under attack, she's saying, don't do it this way, do it my way. Again, it is not the responsibility of trans activists or any trans person to coddle bigots and make them feel comfortable, especially when their rights and lives are at stake. Stonewall was a riot. Lesbians disrupted feminist meetings to demand inclusion. Anita Bryant got a fucking pie to the face. I mean, if the Young Turks were around back then, I could honestly see them tone policing gay activists who did that and saying, oh, this is bad.
I am always of the belief that you can't tone police any group of organizers when they're trying to protest for their own rights. It's just not a thing. It shouldn't be a thing. But beyond that, though, I have a feeling if the protest was about abortion rights and it was a bunch of white women barricading a room, I personally think Anna would have had a much different response. I think Anna has a bias towards trans people. I don't know if she recognizes the bias or not. I don't know. But I just don't think she would have the same reaction if it was white people or even if the movement was different, in my personal opinion. Because there have been times and time again when immigrants have barricaded offices, or not immigrants, excuse me, activists for immigration rights have barricaded offices. There have been times where white women who are pro-choice, who are for reproductive rights, have been barricading rooms, barricading offices. TYT has covered most of them. They never speak about it the way they speak about trans activists. And it's just weird. You know what I mean? Because it's like, well, if you're totally supporting gun rights activists, if you're supporting reproductive rights activists, if you're supporting immigration activists, when they barricade rooms and they occupy rooms and they sit down and they get arrested or whatever, you're in support of that. But then the minute it's trans activists, oh, look at how loud they're being. Look at how dishonest they're being. Oh, look at how, that's how you think you need to protest? Shame on you. Have fun with your clout. It's just that the difference in response is very interesting in my opinion, because it's showing very clear bias. Here's the thing. I don't know if they're consciously biased or not. Maybe they're just biased and they don't know. I don't know. Maybe we can give them the benefit of the doubt here, but it's just weird. You know what I mean?
You're going too far. I mean, look, J.K. Rowling has also denounced the tactics of radical trans activists because their advocacy for themselves makes her feel uncomfortable. Now, where does that stem from? Transphobia. Because they are forcing people to see their humanity and how unjustified their exclusion from society is. So I'll ask TYT, is it civil rights that you care more about, or is it the comfort of bigots? Because you have to pick. Because either way, I promise you, however trans people choose to advocate for themselves, it's going to make bigots uncomfortable. It's going to be deemed inappropriate because the tactics aren't really the issue here, right? They know this. The fact that they have the audacity to dare demand equality and stand up for themselves in the first place when society...
Wow, that's interesting. Mike is literally saying everything I'm saying right now, or I just said.
He wants them to go back into the closet is the real issue. But in conclusion, let me just say here that what TYT is doing is profoundly dangerous. And they know what they're doing. Cenk and Anna have both been in the game way longer than me, and they know exactly the impact that they are going to have with this level of discourse, right? They know that using specific anecdotes of marginalized people saying or doing something that they disapprove of is a dangerous game. Right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know any leftist activist that has a platform that was like, I don't care about voting. Voting is rigged. I don't care about it. Oh, I'm gonna advocate against Republicans, but don't vote because voting is rigged. Are you for real? Are you for real?
Because this is what Republicans do. This is what they do to validate discrimination. They say, hey, this one trans person or gay person did something bad. Aren't they so unreasonable? Shouldn't we deny them rights? This is how you get people to engage in transphobia, because if they buy into the premise that trans people as a whole are wrong about issue X, they're more likely to be open to discrimination, broadly speaking, right? And I don't care what TYT's intent is. I really don't. I don't care about their catalog of pro-trans videos. In fact, you can argue that that makes it worse because, again, they have a very large liberal and left-leaning audience that isn't going to listen to what the Daily Wire has to say about trans people. But if Cenk and Anna say that these trans activists are so unreasonable, their audience might actually be susceptible to that, right? And I don't even have to warn Jenk and Anna how the right is going to weaponize their grievance against trans activists as further proof that the entire community is unreasonable, because they've already done that.
Yeah.
My polite disagreement with Anna over the birthing person shit was literally quoted in Fox News as evidence that trans activists are unreasonable, and no disagreement at all is allowed when all I simply tried to do was engage in good faith, have a conversation. Furthermore, they have a massive, massive, massive audience, right? Saying something incorrect or making a hyperbolic statement about an entire group of people, I mean, that has consequences. And let me just say this. As a gay man, this is not the first time where I've had to confront supposed allies about them being bad allies, right? I think that if you're a queer person, you've absolutely met an ally once or twice whose support is fickle and conditional. But here's the thing. They're never going to be there for you when you need them the most. So those types of allies, just disregard them. Perhaps they'll support you passively and offer kind words once in a while, but that's the extent of their support. You know the kind of allies I'm talking about, right? The ones who will say, oh, I have no problem with gay people. I support the sinner, not the sin. Or the ones who say that they love LGBTQ plus people and have an LGBTQ plus friend or family member, but yet they vote Republican every single election cycle. Those types of allies. Those are the allies that are just worthless, in my opinion, right? They're not going to be my number one enemy, but certainly they're not going to be somebody who I spend much time with. There's a difference between those kinds of allies and the allies who assured me when I came out, or more specifically when I was outed to everyone, that they're going to protect me and literally put their bodies on the line to stop physical harm from coming my way. Because
imagine your trans employee quitting because of your rampant transphobia and still misgendering them in your statement addressing it.
So unfortunately, Benny has decided to leave TYT. I am definitely heartbroken over her decision to do that.
No, this is foul. This is foul. Stop.
Because I was afraid that that would happen when a homophobic family member was sitting ominously in their car for hours across the street from my house. I was wondering, oh my God, am I going to get attacked by a baseball bat? The people who assured me that no harm will come my way, that's the kind of allies we deserve, right? And I've talked about my experience in a coming out video. I'll link to that. We're willing to put aside their own comfort to confront bigots and make them feel uncomfortable so you don't have to. You deserve the type of ally who's going to put their necks on the line to save you from harm or discrimination. So what I'm trying to say ultimately is you deserve better than TYT. If they're going to apply terms and conditions to their support for trans people or trans activists, it doesn't make the trans people unreasonable to tell them to go fuck themselves. They're the ones being unreasonable. And look, you can be disappointed. I personally am disappointed. I've watched TYT since 2008 when George W. Bush was still president, and I've been a network partner since 2017 up until May of this year. There's been periods where I disagree with them and didn't like some things that they said about particular issues, but I still never would have expected this level of vitriol towards trans activists. But regardless of their intent or how they got here, that doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that they're here now. In the same way I've had to cut out cancerous family members, I'm cutting out TYT from my media diet. Because if the so-called home of progressives tries to make you feel like shit for standing up for yourself in the face of discrimination and possibly elimination, I promise you, you don't need them in your life. You don't.
It's honestly Anna's look for me here. Sis looks like she's going to an adult prom. Why is your hair done up like that in a newscast? Yeah, I mean, TYT has a lot of viewers. I've been around for like 15 years.
You deserve better. Trans people deserve better. You can find better allies than that. So I'll tell TYT the same thing that I've told family members who tried to make me feel bad for shoving my gayness down their throats or advocating for myself too much or too loudly. Go f*** yourself.
Mike did not give a shit.